Happy Sunday, everyone. I'm Reverend Kathy from Unity North Spiritual Center in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Welcome to our Sunday lesson on September 27th, 2020. I got the month right this time. Last week I said it was August. So I'm all mixed up. It's the pandemic, what can I say? Anyway, September 27th, and I'm so glad you're with us. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. So we're glad you tuned in today. And if you're new, you can find out more about us on our website, unitynorthmn.org. unitynorthmn for Minnesota.org. And you can find information about upcoming events, especially next Saturday. We have Matthew Fox in a virtual event, and this is the last week to register, so check it out. Also, I want to acknowledge Tracy Roloff, Sue Matson, and her daughter Shannon for all their incredible work on Good For You Day, which turned into Good For You Day week. Because originally when they took it on to organize, that was before the pandemic, and they had to convert it all from a one-day healing fair, so to speak, to a one-week virtual event. So kudos to them, just fantastic job, and we just have so much gratitude and appreciation for all that they have done. So thank you to the three of you. And to all of those who participated, who signed up to do readings or healing sessions or whatever it was, classes, and to each of you who participated and partook of the wonderful gifts and talents at this event. So thank you all. So we're going to do our daily word as usual, and then we'll move into our lesson today. Let me just, okay. So the daily word today is gratitude. Deep gratitude fills my heart and mind. During times of quiet contemplation, I bring to mind everything I have to be grateful for. And those thoughts fill my mind like wildflowers blooming in a field. As I feel gratitude for my blessings, my heart becomes full with quiet joy. This joy touches every part of me and inspires me to share my blessings in the spirit of grateful service. Sharing my joy is a wonderful way to feel awareness of the divine spirit within myself and others. My gratitude practice keeps me calm and confident as I feel grateful for answered prayer, even when the answer has yet to manifest. I continue to give thanks in the sure knowledge that even more blessings are coming my way. And from 1 Timothy 4, verses 4 through 5, for everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected, provided it is received with thanksgiving, for it is sanctified by God's word and by prayer. And so we're grateful for the power of gratitude. Well, today is our third week in the Creation Spirituality series, and each lesson stands on its own if you haven't been with us up to now. And they are recorded and put on our website, so you can still access them. So today's lesson title is Via Creativa, Creativity and Birth. Postmodern theologian Matthew Fox was in a terrible car accident in 1976 and spent over 2 years in constant pain. It was pain so great he never had one full night's sleep during that time. It was the darkness of the path of the Via Negativa for him, where he had no choice but to be with the pain and go into it. And out of that time in the darkness, that time in the womb of pain and silence, he gave birth to an incredible book called A Spirituality Named Compassion. So in that book, he wrote, God has laid an egg, a beautiful, delicate, organic, developing, and life-filled egg. It is our home. We call it the global village. Unlike any generation to precede us, we have taken a look at its beauty. In our times, there has occurred an unprecedented breakthrough in our awareness and appreciation of the world egg. That breakthrough is in the form of photographs taken by astronauts miles from our global village. What we see through these pictures, no human beings in the entire history of the world has ever seen before. It is the oneness, the unity, the harmony and balance of our global village. It is truly a new mandala, this picture we all share of the globe on which we live. Now that was written some time back, and now we've been accustomed to these pictures, but when you think about it, we can take a moment and still become awestruck by this fact, that was the moment when we truly knew our oneness. Fox went on to say the word mandala comes from the Sanskrit word for circle or center. A mandala is a sacred circle, which is meant to heal us, to make us whole and as holy as we truly are. There are many mandalas in our lives: atoms, the eye, the body, flowers, the DNA, when viewed from the top. To meditate on a mandala is to get in touch quite literally with our roots as living organisms, since every cell is a mandala. Fox said the world egg, our global village, is fighting to breathe as a single organism, a unity struggling like a newly hatched egg to survive. And this book was written, several decades ago, and yet that passage applies so much to today with our pandemic, and this Black Lives Matter and this whole idea of struggling to breathe. And like any true mandala, this global village is not merely out there, but is in us at the same time that we are in it. The healing of the new mandala, the global village known as the world egg, takes place together with the healing of the human egg, the soul, or it does not take place at all. It's like the story of the teacher who's trying to deal with a recalcitrant student. So tears to shreds a map of the world with, thinking that it's an impossible task, and gives it to the young boy to put together. Within 10 minutes, the boy's back, the task completed. Astounded, the teacher said, "How did you do it?" And the boy replies, "Well, when I turned the pieces over, I found a torn up person. I put the person together, and when I looked at the other side, the world was whole again." A lesson for all of us. We are each called to birth a new world, personally and also collectively, and it's imperative that we do. Our own souls are not separate from the world, but are intricately connected. And each one of us has a unique way of putting the puzzle pieces together. We each have our own way of walking the path to wholeness and birthing our unique gifts in the world. Someone was once questioning the artist Picasso's unique way of painting. The man told Picasso he ought to make pictures of things the way they are, objective pictures. When Picasso said he did not understand, the man produced a picture of his wife from his wallet, and he said, "There, you see there's a picture of how she really is." Picasso looked at it and he said, "Well, she's rather small, isn't she, and flat?" Well, when Matthew Fox had very risky surgery on his spinal cord to relieve his constant pain, he went under anesthesia, and the great mystic, German mystic, Meister Eckhart, came to him, and they walked together on a beach. And it was one of the most transcendent dreams of his life. And from that time on, Fox said he knew they had a rendezvous together. Since then, Fox has resurrected and translated many of his writings from the German. In fact, he wrote a second book about him called Meister Eckhart, a Mystic Warrior for Our Times. Eckhart said, from all eternity, God lies on a maternity bed giving birth. The essence of God is birthing. I love that. The essence of God is birthing. The path of the Via Creativa is all about birthing and creativity. In this 4-week lesson series, we've been lightly exploring the 4 paths of creation spirituality. And if you're new today, each lesson stands on its own, as I said, and can be found on our website. But Fox is the founder of the tradition and spiritual movement of creation spirituality, very compatible with unity, and suggests there are 4 paths that can help us describe our journey to enlightenment. We began with the Via Positiva, which, like unity, teaches that we are born in original blessing, not original sin. We have been blessed by the universe from the beginning, somewhere between 15 and 20 billion years of blessing. It makes the concept of original sin that was first taught by the Church Father Augustine seem absolutely redundant. While the Via Positiva focuses on the awe, the wonder, and the breadth of life, then the Via Negativa focuses on the mystery, the darkness, and the depth of life. It teaches us that it's important to go into the darkness, the shadow, and to face pain and suffering, and to find remedy in silence and stillness. It recognizes the value in the mystic, the right brain, and the feminine. Out of the Via Positiva and the Via Negativa, we then enter the path of the Via Creativa and give birth to ourself as a conscious co-creator. It is out of the darkness of the Via Negativa, the silence, the suffering, the womb, that something new is born. When the male and female unite, the child is born. When head and heart come together, a new birth takes place. I think about the birth of unity. You know, it took both male and female, both Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, co-founders, to birth unity. It was Myrtle Fillmore who first accepted the idea of divine healing. It was Charles Fillmore who edited the first magazine. It was Myrtle who first led Silent Unity, the prayer ministry. And it was Charles who named the work Unity and developed it into a worldwide organization. It was Myrtle who led the people in meditation and prayer. It was Charles who made speeches and wrote books. They worked together as heart and head worked together, and from their united efforts grew the great movement that is unity. Now, each of us has male and female within, and the capacity to birth ourselves as conscious creators, thereby birthing a new world. Mark Twain said, "Why is it that we rejoice at a birth and grieve at a funeral? It's because we're not the person involved." Well, whether it's the birth of a child, the birth of an idea, a work of art, a meal, a new venture, or a new way of being, It is the birth of ourselves as creators. And every time we engage in a creative act, no matter how small, we become instruments of joy and beauty in the world. Joy is an internal process grounded in spiritual truth. It is a state of being knowing that all is well, whatever the outer appearance. Unlike happiness, which disappears with the next drama, joy is within us and ever present. And beauty is cosmic wholeness and harmony. Gandhi once said, "Real beauty is my aim." You know, I felt that incredible sense of joy and beauty when I gave birth to each of my sons. And I felt it when I've given birth to my creative gifts. The experience of joy and real beauty is not just exclusive to parents. It comes in so many ways, so many moments. Speaking of creativity, several weeks after a young man had been hired, he was called into the personnel director's office. "What's the meaning of this?" the director asked. "When you applied for this job, you told us you had 5 years experience. Now we discover this is the first job you ever had." "Well," the young man said, in your advertisement you said you wanted somebody with imagination." Well, Aurobindo said, "You are to be a living, ardent tool with which the supreme artist works, the perpetual process by which his reality is birthed into concrete expression." So we are growing into accepting the truth of ourselves as co-creators with God. And this includes great joy and beauty and also awesome responsibility. You know, and the responsibility can overwhelm us. Dag Hammarskjöld asked the question, do you create or do you destroy? For as Eckhart said, we are heirs of the fearful creative power of God. And it is both a terrible and a wonderful power. Fox said, like a volcano that spews hot lava from the streaming bowels of the earth, we have powers of birthing that are as destructive as they are awesome. We need to learn reverence for creativity and to befriend it and wrestle with it the way Jacob wrestled with the angel. For if we do not, our birthing abilities can destroy us in the form of nuclear war or out of control consumerism. A perverse creativity is our creativity to be for life or for death, for people or for profits, for justice or for forgetfulness. You know, it's important that we overcome our own fear of creativity and surrender to it for birthing goodwill and other goals that are worthy of our species and a blessing to this planet. When we become fearful of birthing any creative idea or endeavor, we might consider the metaphor of the actual birth experience. You know, the transition stage of labor is the interval during which the cervix goes from 7 centimeters to complete dilation at 10 centimeters. During this time, the mother usually notes a drastic change and may respond by getting very anxious. And if she's not properly supported and prepared, she may feel panic. As in the early stages of labor, she can assist only by relaxing. If she loses control, fights the contractions, she will increase her own fear, which in turn increases her discomfort. For most women, this is the most difficult stage of labor because the interlude seems to threaten the loss of control and momentarily at least to be without fruit. So this description of labor applies to men and women in our efforts as conscious creators. The birth process requires a complete surrender, even in the midst of hard work, and the outcome will be something new and joyful and beautiful. I love this story. Rosemary Laurie wrote about her oldest son, Brian, saying, I don't want a new baby. She said this was his response when I told him his father and I were expecting a third child. We'd survived the first round of sibling rivalry when his brother Damien was born. But now 3-year-old Brian had made his stand about this new baby, and neither logic, reason, nor persuasion could budge him. Puzzled, I asked him, "Why don't you want a new baby?" With wide and teary eyes, he said, "Because I want to keep Damien." How sweet. When my youngest son, Justin, was 12, he knew that imagination and creativity were a burning issue with me. They still are, in fact. So when I wanted to do a job that he did not want to do, he would say, "Mom, it's going to be quite a while because I'm busy right now. I'm thinking creatively." He had my number, didn't he? Well, and at the time I asked him if I could share that in the Sunday service. I learned to always ask his permission or it would get me in trouble later when someone after church would make a comment to him and he'd say, "You didn't ask my permission to quote me." So anyway, when I asked him this, he said, "Yes, you can use the story, but I want a special bonus because it was a very creative thought." Now, creation spirituality says one of the greatest sins against creativity is adultism. Fox says we are too serious. We need to become as little children and play more. For the child, life is to be played, not worked at, and certainly not toiled at. Food is to be played with as well as eaten. Feet are to be played with, not just used for transportation. Life is to be lived playfully, laughingly, wonderingly. Soon, however, the worrying adult enters with the philosophy of all seriousness and no nonsense. The child must learn to laugh less and be serious more. One does not play at things, one works at them. The solemn and utilitarian mind begins to take over. What motivates learning is not fascination then, but a system of rewards and punishments and the future demands of the job market. Even games are no longer for fun. They're tests of skill, coordination, discipline. They're fueled by the desire to defeat an opponent. Sport is not for sport. It consists of workouts, the development of teamwork, and the preparation for one's life work. In short, children turn everything into play. Their parents turn play into work. For a child, the most common adult questions are, "Why don't you grow up?" And "Why don't you act your age?" which is usually just what the child is doing. Such advice turns out to mean, "Why don't you become more like us?" namely nervous, worried, stiff, grouchy, irritable, bored. For all our dark sayings about original sin, children are still in touch with the Garden of Eden. When my sons last visited, we looked through some old photos and school papers that I've been carrying around for them for some years. And Justin, my son from North Dakota, found an old paper he'd written when he was in elementary school. I think he was about 8. And it shows his creativity and also makes some comments on the system in which he found himself at the time. It was called "The Day I Became the Teacher." So he writes, "It happened when the teacher thought we were the worst class out of 100 classes. She said I was the nicest kid in the class, and if anything happened, I'd be in charge. The next day she disappeared, and I was in charge. I went up to the front of the class and said, 'Listen up, you pigs, I'm taking over. If any of you talk without raising your hand, that's 1 page of homework for the whole class.' All day I taught about rules. The class got 116 pages of homework. I taught them to be quiet. They didn't get any homework then for the rest of the day. The best thing about the day was when the teacher was back and we were the best class." Well, funny and interesting commentary. My 10 and 7-year-old granddaughters, Kenna and Linnea, are incredibly creative. Their parents have been letting them paint and experiment with just about any medium imaginable since they were 1. I remember I was there once when the little one decided she was going to paint the top of the dog. Well, they stopped that. But anyway, they gave up trying to keep things very neat. When Kenna was 4, across the living room wall, the entire living room, she had her art gallery. And there were paintings hanging from string everywhere. And when I visited, she gave me a tour. She would point to an abstract painting she had done, and she would tell me it was from Russia. And then she pointed to another one. This one's from Spain. She would go on telling me the various countries they were from and then what they all meant. And it was an amazing creative tale that she invented as she went along, and it changed every time she would tell it. I just loved walking into that environment of creativity. One of the wonderful aspects of the theology of creation spirituality is that it results in creativity and joy, and that takes us out of adultism. It is a choice that we make. Unity teaches we have every reason to use our gift of imagination. It's one of our spiritual gifts. And to be joyful. We can assume responsibility for our attitudes and choose beliefs that help us to live creative and joyful lives. Charles Fillmore said, "The true mystics I have known have been people who never lost the sense of the child in wonder. The mystic, after all, is the divine child in us, all wanting to play in the universe." Well, each of the 4 paths can be thought of as a commandment for our journey. The commandment of the Via Positiva is fall in love at least 3 times a day. And it's mentioned with a star, a galaxy, a tree, a plant, a person. The commandment of the Via Negativa is dare the dark. Have the courage to face your own shadow, pain, suffering, and silence. And the commandment of the Via Creativa is do not be reluctant to give birth. So the special exercises this week are 1, follow the commandment, do not be reluctant to give birth. 2, trust your creative images and act on them, whether it's writing a poem, cooking a meal, working on a car, starting a new venture. Be aware of your creative gift and give thanks. 3, clearly imagine that you already have what you hope for, that you have reached your goals. What does your life look and feel like? And 4, let go of the serious adult and play like a child this week. We are at the center of the cosmos with all of the creative power there is available to us right now. That power is greater than any blocks or fears or critical voices we might have. Whatever is going on in the outer world, let us open ourselves to the spirit of the universe and create our lives as a work of art and a birthing of joy and beauty in our great global community. God bless you. Have a wonderful week giving birth and being creative. God bless you.